Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're delighted to have in studio with us Kelly Garner. Kelly, welcome to Revealing the Truth.
Thank you.
Glad you could be with us. Kelly is the author of The Night That Changed Our Lives, The Devil Pushed Me in a Pit, but God Pulled Me Out. Kelly was born and raised in Florence, Alabama. He's called Birmingham home now for close to 30 years. He has resided mostly in Birmingham, in the Birmingham suburb of Vestavia Hills. He's married to a native of Vestavia Hills, Melissa, and they have two boys. He's a 1983 graduate of Bradshaw High School in his hometown of Florence. Had served as the basketball manager for the Gulf South Conference champions, University of North Alabama Lions, and eventually earned his bachelor degree in public relations communications from Auburn in 1992. He's been a part of many civic organizations and nonprofits in his life. He's volunteered with Children of Alabama Health System, American Diabetes Association, the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, and working with several churches, including his own, in feeding the hungry of Birmingham and around the world. And he's written this poignant story about something that those who are in Alabama are familiar with, the terrible ice storm that we had that shut down the city, that caused people to be home, and we're going to get to that story in just a minute. But Kelly, tell us a little bit about your journey.
Well, it was, this particular day was kind of eerie for a lot of people. Like you said, we're not used to that here in the South, that type of weather, and it just piled on top of everyone because the schools and businesses let out at one time, and all of a sudden it was just total chaos. And looking out over the streetscape and seeing everyone slipping, sliding, cars going every which way, I decided to pitch in and start helping. And that's something I've never been shy of before. And I just started pitching in and helping. All of a sudden, you had one guy on a bumper, then you had two or three other guys joining with you and start pushing. And it was just 1 mile, one car, and just hour after hour took place.
So, the storm story is really where we're going to get to. But growing up, you had some challenges, physical, some health situations in your life. And how did that impact you?
Well, I've had diabetes for over 42 years, and just growing up, I never really felt, in the age that I grew up with diabetes at that time was not where we are today. Technology and diabetes didn't quite mesh just yet.
Right.
So for me, it was the physical effort of playing sports and what have you was not quite there, and I just I could not participate in a lot of stuff because it just was no way possible.
So you took shots daily. They didn't really have testing back then, did they?
Right, testing was not prevalent until the mid to late 1980s, and my first blood glucose testing equipment was probably around 1985 and 1986. And
so how did you balance between, or was it just a swing either way?
It was just a swing, just really a feel. My mother could look in my eyes and see black circles under the eyes and felt like your blood sugar's high. Or, of course, the hypo side of things where you're bottoming out and she can see them shaking, sweating. That didn't happen very often, though, as a kid, because obviously a lot of sugar going in and no insulin going, as much insulin as I could put in, not knowing if it was a crapshoot or not.
Mm-hmm. So how did that affect you from friends, from family events? I mean, what did it have an impact on you? I understand the sports activities, but personal development, skill sets.
It was kind of hard because a lot of the parents might not have wanted me to come stay at their house with their child. Not many, but just a few. So it was a little apprehension, I guess, with some folks. They didn't really care for that, not knowing exactly what I was what they would have to go through with me. And I had to look back on where we are today with everything that we do have. There's probably not a kid with diabetes today that could not go stay somewhere and not feel the family they're staying with, whatever, would be threatened with anything.
So you got involved in a way to be involved in athletics, which was to help out.
Yes, I mean, I loved being behind the scenes, and I was a football manager in high school, and then I got a scholarship to go to college as a basketball manager, and I took advantage of that and loved every minute of it. It was a thrill a minute, and yeah, that was just behind the scenes for me is what I loved the most, I think.
Good. Now, how did you make your way in the world? What was your career when you got out of college?
Sales. That's where I knew I wanted to be. I'm a sales guy. I love being in front of people. I love presenting a product, a service, and knowing what that is and showing them how much I love it and show them that how I can be there to support them and their needs. And that's what all my accounts ever said about me. I was always, Johnny on the spot for them. If they had a question, a problem, a situation come up, whether it be a phone call or a visit, I would be there for them.
And what industries did you serve?
Mostly my 13 years that I spent prior to the accident was medical device sales. And ironically, it was with diabetes. And the company I worked for laid off a couple of hundred of us. So it was, it was a bad situation, but it did not end bad. I mean, it looked bad in the beginning, but it worked out well. It was not a problem. I didn't have any reservations about what took place. I didn't blame God. Well, why did this happen?
Right.
What?
Right.
I knew there's a reason, a purpose for that, and at that time I was traveling quite a bit, so it took me off the road, and it was not something I could have. That was probably a good thing to be off the road at that time.
So take us to this 2014. I'm from Pittsburgh, so when this whole weather report came in, it really wasn't anything that and I spent 35 years in Atlanta, so I knew how the city responded and shut down, and here we were faced with a situation here in Birmingham. Kind of lay out the day. You were there at work?
Well, first of all, I did an interview with a station in Toronto, Canada, and they said the same thing. They got a kick out of it. They said, well, you guys in the South can't handle this. You don't have sanding equipment, plows. No, we don't have that. And it was 3 years anniversary. Was this past weekend was 3-year anniversary. And that particular day, I'd already been laid off, and I was going to have hand surgery that morning. And my wife and I were driving to the surgery center, and on the way there, got a phone call. Hey, where are you? Well, we're on our way. I said, well, don't worry about it. You don't need to come anymore. It's canceled. So we turn around, try to go back to the house. Just at that point, that's where we see all the businesses and schools were closing, and we were in the middle of all that. So we were going back to the house and get stuck ourselves and get the wife home, get the kids squared away, and that's where I decided to venture back out to Highway 31, which is a mile off my neighborhood.
So how did your wife respond when you said to her, I'm going to go back out and help people?
She didn't know I was gone. No one knew I was gone. She had fallen asleep. She was reading a book and didn't care anything about the snow and ice. My kids were out doing their thing, playing and having a good time, and I said, well, I'll just go on out and see what's going on.
What were you thinking? What thoughts did you have in your head?
Well, first I wanted to go check on the car. We got stuck near highway entrance into our neighborhood off 31, so I checked on the car, then I looked up, and where the car was parked was a little bad intersection, and there's a lot of people still trying to come and go out of the neighborhood. So I got to the bottom of the hill, stopping cars from coming one direction while the other cars were coming down, and then I just, that kind of tailed off a little bit. So then I went back to the Highway 31, which was less than 100 yards away from me. And that's when I see all the ATVs and just total chaos going on there. And that's when it just one car and just one after the other. Just amazing, really, to see.
Right. So you and a group of others, totally unknown to each other, just got out there and started. So you were bundled up at the time.
Oh yeah, I was well prepared for that. I had the long handles on, the whole thing, wool socks and toboggan gloves, the whole bit.
So kind of walk us through the story. What happened?
Well, by about 7 o'clock that night, the police had blocked off the bottom of Highway 31 and the top of Highway 31. So no cars that were coming and going. And all the volunteers, we had gotten every car off the Highway 31 we can get off.
Right.
They were in the median. They were piled up on the side of the road in a nice little manner. And I found a pickup truck that was vacant, and I looked around, didn't see the owner, and by that time I'm bottoming out. My blood sugar, by this time I had not eaten anything or had anything to drink in over 22 hours. So here I am looking around, see an empty truck, no owner. I opened the tailgate, just popped myself in the back and looked up and was just enjoying the moment, going, wow, this is pretty cool. You know, I get to see the snow and ice coming down. We don't get to see it very often. And my son had called. My phone was in bad shape anyway. It was dying pretty quickly. The battery life was not very good. And he said, Dad, you don't sound good. I'm coming to get you. Where are you? And I explained to him, well, I'm outside by the Walmart neighborhood market. And he's on his way to find me. And in the meantime, I jump up out of the truck or get up out of the truck and start walking, thinking, well, I'll make it home, no problem. At this point, it's a drunken stupor for those who know about diabetes, and just not a good combination of things that had been going on that day. Not having anything to eat or drink like I did, and my blood sugar dropping, and I decided to go straight, and that straight was off of a cliff. And that's where I land 40 foot later. I have no recollection of what took place. I don't remember feeling anything. I don't remember seeing anyone. There was thought at one time was maybe someone pushed me off. I don't recall seeing anyone around, whether they did or not. There was no evidence of anything like that. So I just know that it had to have been myself walking off that cliff and landed like I did 40 foot later in the bottom of the canyon.
Wow. And so you're there. Are you conscious?
I'm not conscious at all. I don't recall waking up in the middle of the night. Nothing that I was not stuck between rocks or had to cut my arm off or fight off polar bears or rattlesnakes, anything like that. It was just me and God and those angels that were there protecting me, wrapping me up, keeping me warm, and I didn't feel threatened at all. Whatever was going on, I don't recall trying to pull myself up off the rock that I landed on. It was just me there all night, close to 14 hours in 8-degree weather, and it was just me at the bottom of that pit.
So who found you?
My family couldn't find me that night. They were looking. Social media went ballistic that night. My picture was plastered, and some people have said that that photo was seen around the world. No one saw me, heard of me, could see. Anyway, I was wrapped up pretty well. I mean, I don't know if you would have recognized me anyway with the toboggan and the hood I had on top of my head with the jacket. So my family, they were checking women's stations and cars and grocery stores and convenience stores, churches, schools, whatever was open. No one found me. My neighbors saw a news story early the next morning, I think about 6 o'clock the next morning, and they said, wait a minute, that's our neighbor. And that's when the Bendall family got on the phone and started calling the other neighbors, said, Kelly needs our help. Let's go. And they sent a message out on Facebook, okay, the search is on. So we're starting here at my house. We're going to start heading this direction. Some of you go that way, and we don't know where it is. And my phone by that time had died. I mean, it was dead probably before I even fell. So my phone was dead, and there's no pinging in my phone to find out exactly where I was. So my neighbors found me the next morning. That morning.
So a search party from the neighborhood came and discovered you at the bottom of a cliff.
Yes, right. My one neighbor, that Mike Schaffner, is a hunter, and I give him credit for being that hunter with those eyes that he has. And he said it was just by the grace of God that he looked down and he saw me. He said he was something about where he was walking at that time. He felt like that would be a good place to actually take a closer look. And even though I was covered with some more snow and ice, and I had the jacket and everything on, and a little debris. I mean, the woods, things around me.
Right.
And so here I was, and he just looked down and he yelled down at me, Kelly, is that you? And apparently I had woken up enough to say, it's me. I'm the one, And so they were able to get themselves down, and some had to go around, some came through the woods, another different directions, and some did slide down and get to me, and that's where I was covered with neighbors who came to pull me out of there.
Wow. Now, what condition were you in?
I had busted my head. I had a TBI. I broke a toe, lost some hearing.
What's a TBI?
Traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
I had bleeding on the brain, broke ribs, and I shattered my vertebrae. And that was the most crucial. They had to get the brain bleed had to subside before they could do the surgery. And that was probably, I think it was about close to 4 days before they could operate on repair my vertebrae. And, that's where they fused my back together again with rods and screws to piece it back together. And the surgeon was just astounded. He thought for sure he was going to tell my family that I would not be walking. It was that close to the spine itself. I mean, he called it a crumbled up crackers is what he called my vertebrae. And I laughed with him and said, did you have to super glue me back together? Because it was like cookie crumbs, crackers. Right. And he was just amazed to tell my family that this guy's got God on his side because he will be walking.
So they get you in the hospital. The paramedics come, lift you out of there. Are you conscious now? Are you aware of what's going on around you?
I'm not. I'm pretty well medicated by that time. I don't feel anything. I've heard people talking to me. Don't have my eyes open. I guess the brain injury itself. I was not able to keep my eyes open because of the pain that I was having. So I don't know who was talking to me, but I heard voices and people talking to me like we got taken care of, and I don't feel any of the pain at all. And I could hear my family around me and just different visitors coming in and out, and thanking them coming in. But I don't know who. I think I know who you are, but
right.
Just no really true feelings at all of pain of anything.
So from this date in January of 2014, you're now in the hospital. You're facing numerous surgeries.
Actually, just the one.
Just the one back surgery?
Yeah, just the surgery, right. The brain bleed was able to subside with some medication.
Okay.
So there was no drilling going on. I broke the toe, which it took them a couple days to figure that out, but that was the least of the worries. But I kept complaining about my toe. My family was laughing at me because I kept talking about my feet. My feet were hurting. Well, they said, well, it's okay. You probably get bruised up, whatever. Well, then the X-rays came back. Well, yeah, you did break your toe. So just the one surgery was the back, and after that it was strictly physical therapy and the rehabilitation from 2 or 3 different settings I had to be involved in, from going from the NICU, going to a step-down unit, and step-down unit to Spain Rehab Hospital, and Spain Rehab Hospital getting transferred over to Lakeshore Rehabilitation Hospital on the outpatient side of things. And so it was mostly just rehabilitation from that point.
And how long was that process?
Well, the 23 days in the hospital, and that included, that 23 days includes the rehabilitation I went through in-house. And then overall, it took about 6 to 8 months to get full recovery back. And even a few months after that, did I get a full feel of taking the steps I was taking and being able to keep my balance, and to even get my driver's license, because the injuries I had, I was not able to drive. They took that away from my privileges, away from driving. So, and I had to get all that back to where I could do the twists and turns and looking over the shoulders and what have you.
Right. You give all credit to God for them finding you, for surviving this. Were there any, you talk about angels, you talk about, is that a reference to something you perceived, or just something you're looking at Scripture and saying that you have knowledge of it because the Scripture tells you? Well,
I had a lot of folks that wanted to know, did I have a angel moment, or did I have almost in heaven meeting God moment.
Mm-hmm.
And no, I did not. But I did feel the angels were protecting me, and I've had those moments before. I had a moment like that before when my father passed away 38 years ago. My sister and I were at our pastor's home, and I laid my head down, get in bed, lay down, and had the little prayer for my dad, knowing he was on his deathbed. Mm-hmm. And I just had angels tell me, be prepared, because, and this was as right in front of me. I mean, this was that moment of realness was taking place, and for me to be prepared that your dad just died, and that's when the knock on the door came for the pastor, just minutes later, and I was ready for that, to get that response.
How did you handle all the medical expenses that were involved in all this?
Well, ironically, being laid off, you would think I don't have any type of insurance of anything, and the company that laid me off, I got a nice severance package from them, and unbeknownst to them, that I'll be in a hospital with all these bills with the accidents, so my insurance was still in place, mm-hmm. and that was a good thing. And then my neighbors and or anonymous donations came from lots of places, and it paid a lot of my co-pays for the hospital bills and all the medical expenses that we incurred from that.
So as you look back on this experience, and you know that you've gone through it, you've survived what others might not have survived, exposure to the elements, crashing blood sugar, bottoming out, putting you in ketoacidosis, your body now beginning to burn itself, but yet you went into almost a state of hibernation because of the cold, because of that was part of your survival story, was that the drop in temperature stopped that destructive process of spilling ketones, of making yourself to the point where you were toxic and your organs would shut down. This lowered your body temperature, it lowered your whole metabolism to where the fall saved you. Sure
did. Even the brain bleed, with the blood still flowing. That was another point that was made to me by the experts, and instead, not only being covered, but being under some of the privet that I was under, mm-hmm. and that protected me as well. And being in the low-lying area that I did land in, it did protect me. So absolutely, there was no doubt about that.
So as you reflect back on this experience, what are some of the things you can share with our audience that have occurred to you? Some things that, because there's no woe is me, there's no I went through a horrible tragedy, there's no negative. Your takeaway is the night that changed our lives. Reflect with us.
Well, it's so easy for us for any of us to blame someone for a lot of things that do happen in our lives, and yeah, there are a lot of circumstances that take place that we like to point fingers and lay fault on someone and curse and everything else. And this is one of those moments for me where I had that profound feeling that it was God taking control of my life when I needed to hear Him, and I wasn't ever listening. And this was one of those moments where I felt God was talking to me, that mm-hmm. this is your place in this life where I need you to take this message now, where I saved you, rescued you, saved you, and protected you. Now, what are you going to do for me? Are you going to bring other people into my fold? Are you going to bring people to know me? And for me to go through everything I went through, it was never a finger pointing moment. I just trusted that the good Lord was going to be there and take care of me, and He did. And I never had that fear ever come over me that I was never going to recover from this. It was just never that moment.
How has this changed your walk?
Never having shared the gospel with many people at all. I just felt like that I'm a good guy. I can survive this world. I'll get that golden ticket to heaven. No big deal. And it was just like an everyday walk of life, like a happy-go-lucky, fly-by-the-seat of my pants. So this was that time where I felt like this is where I should be sharing the gospel now. And this has been the stage I've been given. God gave me this platform where I can share that now. And look at, I'm speaking with you on live on TV, and here we are. And who gets to hear this? Who may need to hear it? And I've been able to share my testimony with lots of places and a lot of people, civic organizations, churches, medical associations, and these people seeing how God interacted in my life and what all I went through, and that He was there to comfort me, protect me.
Amen. What's your family's take on this? Okay, you experienced it, you lived through it, you felt the sheltering of Psalm 91, the protective covering of God, He who dwells in the shadow of the Most High. You were there under those protective wings. But your family, what's their perspective on all this?
Well, they really felt that, they were pretty much along the same lines, that I was just dad. I was just, I was, I like to think I was the good dad.
Right.
And everything was working well as a family, and they saw it as they too saw it as a God saved my dad for a reason. There was a reason that he had a hand in this, right. And they saw a whole different outlook of everything about myself. I laugh a lot about people cutting you off at the intersection of the roadway or running through a stop sign, and I might would have chased somebody down before the accident took place. I travel, all the traveling I did on my job. Right. I was on the interstate quite a bit. And then after I got my license back, I had this kid that was weaving in and out of traffic, kind of, acting kind of erratic. And then he's well ahead of me. And he pulls off the interstate, gets gas. Well, I know this because I pull off gas, get gas myself. Right. And I pull up next to him and I said, man, are you in a hurry? Yeah, I'm a little bit. I said, well, I was back with you back here a little bit ago. I sure hope you know Jesus, because you may be meeting him sometime soon driving the way you're driving. So at that point, I realized that now I don't have any of that hate that I would have had in my life. And I think it goes with my family as well. They see that and they understand that. So
you've been through the refiner's fire. You saw this as an experience of a pressing, of a new birth, of a new creation, that God had somehow squeezed you down to the nothingness that we are, to be fully reliant upon Him, to absolutely be dependent on Him for your next breath. And He was the one that was able to lift you out of this, and you've made a commitment to bring glory and honor to the Lord through this story that you're telling. This is your testimony. This is your experience. You say, the devil pushed me in a pit, but God pulled me out. Kelly was thrown into a pit by the devil himself, but God was not finished with him. We read of God's undying love for all, and Kelly will not allow a time to go by without sharing this with others. This takes you into what many would consider to be a nightmarish few months. Kelly Garner shares his inspiration and encouragement in how God has enriched his and his family lives through this ordeal. God has provided with a mission of being a leader and disciple, sharing what God has done in his life and what he too can do for others who will give themselves to the Lord. He will be an inspiration to all when they read about his struggles turning into a glorious outcome during his rigorous rehabilitation period. So God used this circumstance to touch your heart, to turn your heart from the things of the world to the things of the supernatural, to share in God's love, to share in his mercy. And you chronicle your journey. You chronicle it by pictures and by giving really honor to all the people that touched your life through this. So this is more than just your testimony. This is a testimony to the love and the kindness and the gifts of others who have supported you through this, who have walked this with you. And you have walked away from a horrible car accident. You've walked away from this circumstance. And what is your message? What is the message you want this statement to our audience that really is the bottom line message?
Well, let me say this. You know, I never been on the receiving end of prayers before. I've prayed for people before, but I never had anyone have to pray for me in this magnitude. And for just for people to send me messages or see me on the street, see me in grocery stores, tell me we were praying for you, and I thank you, and I truly meant thank you because I felt those. Mm-hmm. So for me to tell other people in your audience, it would be that don't ever give up. Don't ever think that that the struggle you're going through is, well, God's put me through this. Well, yes, He is. He puts us through a lot of things to find out who you are and what you're about. Right. And it really enriches your life to stop and recollect what's going on and to have that prayer time and to have that comfort and joy knowing that in His timeline, He will provide that for you when it's that time. Not when we want it, because we all think it's all about us. You know, we want it when we want it.
Amen. Kelly Garner, author of The Night That Changed Our Lives, The Devil Pushed Me in a Pit, but God Pulled Me Out. A story, a poignant story of a man who started his day in a natural disaster situation where he went out while his family was resting. He got his family home and secure, but he then went out to take care of others. And during this act of service of many hours out there, drawing on every reserve of physical strength that he possibly had, he found himself serving the needs of others and being put into a place where he was stretched as far as he could go. We appreciate so much Kelly Garner coming by the studio to share this story with us. I want to encourage all of our audience to get a hold of this book, The Night That Changed Our Lives, especially our Birmingham contingency and our Alabama contingency. This is the story of the 2014 Snowmageddon, where Birmingham was shut down for days. And many have their own stories, but this one is a poignant, touching story that I encourage you. Get it, read it, it will change you. And this is the kind of book you pass on to your friend. Help support Kelly Garner, his family, The Night That Changed Our Lives. Visit www.ignitinganation.com. Go to Books and Media, click on this book, and we'll get it to you. And that concludes our program today. We wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, a Shavua Tov, a great week. And until we see you again Monday morning, 9 o'clock Central Time, we bless you from Numbers chapter 6, verse 22. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn His countenance toward you and give you His peace. In the name of the Prince of Peace, Jesus our Messiah, Amen and Amen and Shalom.